Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. I want you guys to know how much I appreciate you. I love you guys. Thank you so much for the support. It chokes me up because it's overwhelming, and I'm just grateful for it. We're getting a very powerful message out to a lot of people who need to hear it, so thank you. I want to thank our sponsor, Veracity Networks, and my good friend, Drew Peterson. Thank you for believing in me. It means the world to me. And I'd like to welcome our amazing guest today. His name's Batchlor Wise Johnson IV. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
What a cool name, right?
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you for joining us today. I really do appreciate it. And I'm excited for our listeners to get to know you a little better. Batchlor, you're currently a student at BYU finishing up in your master's degree. During you've played football, which is interesting.
Yes, sir.
Did you play both for BYU and Utah?
Yes, sir. So I was originally a walk-on at BYU.
Okay.
Some things happened, injury, tried to get back on the team, couldn't, and then Utah wanted me on. So I was a walk-on there. Okay. And then some things happened my second year. My dad lost his job. Had going through some mental struggles. Okay. I needed to leave the game, and then when I came back, I went to BYU. Well, I went to the master's program at BYU, and then they found out I was in a master's program, and then I played my last year there.
Okay, interesting story. But you were born in Los Angeles, but you were raised in a suburb outside of Houston. Yes, you're a proud member of your church, which is the LDS Church, right? And faith, your faith means a lot to you. I know that. You're very passionate about it. You're also very musically inclined. You got an amazing voice. I'd love you to just sing for us, right? But you do a lot of freestyle, which is what you call it, and you got just an amazing voice. You want to start law school, it sounds like, and then you're also looking at maybe going in the NFL. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Trying to do as much as I can.
Dude, I love it. Well, we were just talking off the air here, and I told Batchlor to his face, the reason why I'm having him on here today is because of his energy, his passion for life, and his desire to do good in the world. Honestly, that's why you're here.
Yes, sir, I appreciate that.
And I hope that your words and the things that you'll say will really inspire our listeners, especially those that might be struggling. So thank you, Batchlor, for being willing to come here and being probably being vulnerable with us and sharing some things with us.
Yes, sir, most definitely.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us really quick a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, what that looked like. I know we mentioned that, and then, tell us a little bit about your family.
So me growing up, as you said, I was born in California. I was raised in a variety of cities the first 7 years of my life, more or less apartment to apartment, motel to motel. Moved to Texas, in Houston originally, in A-Leaf, where we stayed with my auntie.
Okay.
And then my dad, my mom, took care of business and we were able to move into our first house when I was like 8.
Right on.
Or pushing 8.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, that whole story was a blessing in disguise. And so I got to live in what is now known as the #1 community to raise your family in Texas.
Really?
And so, it was a complete 180. And so I got to see both sides, and when it comes to how I was raised, my parents did not want us to be categorized or labeled or limited in any way. So for me, living in a suburban town and being not only the only like LDS person out there, because it's Houston, but Katy, Texas, excuse me, that's what it's called. But I was the only black person in my classes, and so I wasn't allowed, to wear hoodies. I wasn't allowed to wear sports jerseys. I would get physical punishment if I didn't come home with my shirt tucked in.
Really?
I remember I had a progress report that had like 388s, and I got spanked. It was just like my parents, I wouldn't say they were strict, and in no way were they abusive, but there was a standard that you had to live by, and that standard that they kept me at.
Yeah.
Because they didn't go to college, and they wanted to put me in the best position possible. And because of that, I did things that without it, I don't think I would have been able to do. Like my dad had us in choir. My mom had us do, theater. We were involved in church. I was a 5-time class president. I was class president in my 8th grade year. And then And then the high school I was in had 4,000 kids, and I was class president every year of that.
Very
I was
cool.
in like Houston congressional councils. I was doing anti-bullying campaigns. So, and I played football, did track, and played basketball for a year. And so, the way I was raised was just like my dad's motto was, if man can do it, we can do it. And so he felt as if there's nothing we couldn't do. And my mom's whole thing was like, the whole scripture about when you put God first, like, I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's kind of my mom's go-to. Right, and so with that combination, you kind of just, as a kid, you really think that there's really nothing you can't do if you put the work in.
Wow, that's really cool. So really what your dad was saying is there's no limits. It's limitless. You can do whatever you put your mind to.
Yes.
But it sounded like as long as you're putting your faith in the forefront. Is that correct?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Like that's how my parents felt. Like them being together was a miracle. Us being able to live in the house that we lived in was a miracle. Getting to move into that neighborhood was a miracle because it was undeveloped. So you know how real estate is.
Oh yeah.
And so we felt, because we were blessed with these many things and because we read in our scriptures about all these miraculous people, the Lord works the same as he did yesterday, right? And so we believe that. Well, my parents put it instilled in us that miracles happen for us every day.
Yeah. Was it hard though as a kid? Like, did you kind of like how it probably felt like mom and dad were being strict.
You didn't think it was hard until you compared.
Oh, okay.
So it was just it was just normal.
Okay.
And then it got to the point where over the summers we had to have 4 hours of work every day. So like Monday through Friday in the summertime, we would wake up at 7 a.m. every morning and we would go in the backyard and my dad would put us through these crazy, like intense workouts really? To get us ready for sports. And then after that, we would come in and play piano for an hour. And then we would do something else for an hour, whether it be math, reading a book, or studying a language. So I was studying Rosetta Stone, like Spanish for a couple years, and then I did Chinese all through high school. And so I thought in my head, all kids are doing this until you go back to school and you see kids are taking trips. You see kids are enjoying their summers. And then it was just like, what in the world? but so when it starts to pay off, though, because I was probably one of the most unathletic kids ever. And so for me to even be a walk-on at two D1 universities, that in itself was a miracle. And I owe that all to my parents. So like hindsight, everybody has 20/20 vision hindsight. Like they were geniuses, absolute geniuses. In the moment, it was definitely rough. But as kids, you do everything your parents tell you to do anyway.
For sure. Wow, that's awesome. And you mentioned that so they wouldn't let you wear a hoodie. Mm-hmm. Or a sports jersey. How come?
Stereotypes. They didn't want me to be categorized as I couldn't even get I'm not sure if you're familiar, but I couldn't even get a fade on my hair.
Really?
Because every African American kid out there had a fade. And it's just it's a normal haircut. There's nothing wrong with it. But my parents refused to. It was more on my dad. My dad knew. And so I wasn't allowed to wear a hoodie, and then it made sense with the whole Trayvon Martin. Yeah. And so I was like, I wasn't allowed to wear sports jerseys because my dad didn't want them looking at me as a jock. Like I went there for school. He wanted me
school first.
School first. Yeah. Like the schools that we only entertained for football were Harvard, Yale, Cornell, and Columbia, and Lafayette. And so we were only considering those schools because even though they wanted me to play football, they had a good academic background. But we chose BYU because BYU gave me a full academic scholarship. So we weren't even looking at football or track. So, yeah, my dad was strictly, he wanted people to understand that we have things to offer.
Yeah, well, I can imagine at the time, like you said, when you start comparing, you're like, man, these other kids can wear hoodies and sports jerseys and stuff. But, man, I think that's really neat and pretty amazing that your dad was like that because like you said, when you're going through it, it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But then you said you started noticing these payoffs.
Yes.
Right.
Big time. Especially when especially now, like in today's climate, like my mom wouldn't let us like use slang in the house and like, you have different dialects with different people.
Sure.
But that respect level that I had for my parents carried over to when I was able to talk to my professors in a way where they can not just understand me, but look at me and for strictly why I was there for class. It wasn't like I didn't have to acted a certain way, I could just be myself. So because this was so natural growing up, I didn't have to force anything later. And so like, yeah, it paid off.
Yeah, well, that's pretty amazing. So you obviously, school came first. You were playing sports. How were you as a kid, though? I mean, were you a pretty confident kid, or did you struggle? And maybe talk about some of those struggles you did, just individually, that you went through.
I didn't struggle with my mental until college.
Okay.
I wasn't like, because I did so many things, it came with a lot of hate, but it came with a lot of love. And my parents, when you're in our household, they don't feed negativity. Like they wanted to treat our house like a library, like a temple. And so only thing in there were good vibes, laughing, good music. And when it came time to discipline, it's discipline, you move on. Like we didn't have any family like beef. Like we solved things and moved on. As a kid, I would come home, this person said this, and my parents would be like, do you care about what they say or what we say? And then you had to make sure you answer that question correctly. And so we were like, okay, never mind. And so I had, even when I was younger, I was in fourth grade. I remember my fourth grade teacher and a couple kids in my class made fun of me for being LDS. Like I remember vividly getting bullied in my class about being LDS and believing in Joseph Smith. And then my fifth grade teachers, I remember telling my parents that, hey, your son can't do everything. You need to find a way to pick one. My parents left extremely mad, telling me, you're going to do everything now. And then, and then like just going on from then, like that's all. And that just continued all through high school. And you already know, like when the more your name gets known, the more that's likely there's going to be hate that's there. And so when I was class president and doing all these different things, you were met with some scrutiny, but you focused more on proving people right rather than proving people wrong.
Yeah.
But when I got to college, that's when things changed. I was not involved with girls at all in high school. Like I was I had a bishop, Bishop Farewell. He kept me on the straight and narrow. He was super strict with me. I didn't even think about dating really. I had a brief girlfriend in my senior year. It was nothing. It was just like nothing. It was just super immature, nothing crazy. But in college, falling in love, and there's a completely different beast.
Yeah,
and then you start realize, like you really like, not only fall in love, I didn't make the team at BYU when I knew that I should have made the team. And you start, all these comparison things start getting in your head. People with careers, people doing this, people doing that. And because I didn't have that staple with me, like my mental struggled bad. And so my first times dealing with anxiety and depression were when you haven't had a feeling before, it took me for a whirlwind. And so my parents actually had struggles with mental, but they never told us about it.
Okay.
And so
it was all new to you when college came, right?
That emotional literacy, like I was emotionally illiterate, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I remember putting on my helmet at Utah, lining up for just routes on air. Basically, we just run routes with the quarterback. And I legit could not hear anything. And it was the weirdest feeling ever. It was just like, and then like I felt like my body was just moving in slow motion, and I was like sweating, and we hadn't even really started practice yet. And I just realized, like, I talked to one of the I guess the mental health coaches over there, and like, okay, that's your experience an anxiety attack. I was like, no, this is not me.
Right.
Like I'm quote unquote, I'm Batchlor Johnson. I'm supposed to be the guy who does everything. Like this is not supposed to be me. And I used to tell, because my sister dealt with mental problems, I just tell her all the most ignorant things I could say. I would say, you're just not being grateful, or you're just not working hard.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. You must not be doing something right.
Yeah.
And then for the first time, like you realize, like, oh my goodness, like this is they don't care. Like when it comes to mental health, they don't care about your occupation. They don't care about what you've been doing with your life. Like anybody can be affected.
Right.
And so going through that was a huge struggle. I was meeting with my bishop weekly. I was living in Salt Lake, coming down to Provo to meet with BYU counselors that I had known, that I felt comfortable being vulnerable with, because I'd never done this before.
Sure, yeah.
And neither could I afford to go to my knowledge. And so I did that for nearly a year, and I started listening to audiobooks. I got an Audible account, and on top of that, I was studying the Come Follow Me LDS Church Manual daily. And so all those things combined made a difference. But yeah, it was a struggle.
Yeah. How did you reach out to your parents at that time too? Like, you're at college and whatever. Did you let them know, man, I'm really having a hard time?
No, not even when.
Why do you think you didn't do that?
I felt my parents had given me so much that in my head I was just like, I'm sick of taking away from them. And
almost like feeling bad you were struggling because look at all the things they did for me.
Yeah, it's just like, why, like, after everything they've done, how am I, like, this is the time where all their hard work in my head, I'm supposed to be paying it off. Like, I'm supposed to be trying to getting to the point where I'm working to retire them. Like, that's where I put on myself. Like, I told myself, like, I'm going to retire my parents as soon as possible. Like, they work way too hard and they work relentlessly. And
Sure.
I was supposed to be, the go-to child, right? So my sister struggled, and she's super, super strong. And I feel for women, especially, I'm biased to black women because especially like the struggles that they go through.
Yeah.
And then my little brother, he always talked about me being his role model, so I didn't want him to see me weak. And my relationship with my parents have grown more the past year and a half than it has, I feel like, any time in my life, because I don't know how it was with your kids, but like there's a point in time where you realize your parents are humans.
Yeah.
But you forget that, like you forget that because in your head, my parents are superheroes.
Right. Yeah.
And you realize, wow, like they went through stuff too. Like,
yeah.
There wasn't all sunshine and rainbows.
Exactly.
Because they paint struggle to be like, this is part of life and all, but sometimes it does get to you.
Yeah.
And so, like I didn't want to tell them. And looking back, I kind of feel crazy, but in that moment, there is no way I was calling my parents and telling them, hey,
right.
it's getting really bad. I'll sometimes tell them, hey, I have a bad day and I just need a little pick me up, just some normal stuff. But like, hey, I'm seeing counselors and all this kind of stuff. Like, I couldn't tell them that.
Yeah. Well, and it sounded like you put a lot of pressure on yourself. You're going to retire your parents. That's a lot of pressure. My younger brother looks up to me. I'm the role model. I better not show weakness. That's a lot of pressure, right? You're trying to be there for your sister and be that supportive as well. That's pressure, and then just the normal college, everyday life, going to school, trying to get grades and that all this stuff, playing football. Dude, that's a lot to take on. And I think a lot of kids your age in college go through this, that they struggle,
Yes, sir. I don't know. You're right. Like, you're totally right. Like, you don't realize that, like, we are all trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And, like, we don't give each other enough credit. And it's just, there's bad stigmas, especially around getting over, there's a bunch of people that are getting over trauma. And then,
right.
And, like, we put, like you said, like, you put too much burden on yourself. You allow, like, the mental struggles to overshadow or cloud out the things that, that make life great. So
right. Yeah. So you go through this, you're struggling, you're seeing some counselors. Did you start getting some breakthroughs and noticing a difference, and were things starting to get better?
I became genuinely happy after, let me see, about 10 months later.
Okay.
Became genuinely happy. But you start getting back to the core. Like, I started doing things that I used to do when I was growing up. Started focusing my energy in places that not were my strengths, but places that I knew I could grow in and leave out with a positive impact. Then, like you were telling me off air, like waking up in a good mood, that's success in itself. And like, I think back to those days, I woke up motivated every single day.
Yeah.
And not even motivated to accomplish the world, but literally motivated just to eat breakfast.
Yeah.
And just motivated to clean myself up, like brush my teeth, wash my face, and things that like you take for granted when things are really well. But just like looking back, it's like, I just got back to the things that like the small victories, because like the small wins add up. And so like, I could see those big changes.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, we all do this, like, okay, I got to accomplish all these things and then I can be happy. It's like, I'll be happy when, or I'll be happy if. Yes, sir. And I think a lot of us fall into that trap. And so when we do that, though, what happens is we accomplish something and then we're like, I still don't feel happy. What's going on here? That's why when we were talking off air, that happiness, the definition of success should be for all of us, waking up in a good mood. Because, you know, I know a lot of people, Batchlor, and I'm sure you do too, who have it all. It seems like they got a career, they got a following, they got a brand, all this stuff, and they're miserable. So what's the point, right?
Exactly.
You know, so, you know, as you move forward, so here you are, you're still in school, you're in the master's program, right?
Yes, sir.
What are some of your goals and dreams now? What are you trying to shoot for? And then I also want to get into your freestyle.
So, like I said, like as a kid, like you grow up, like I told you about my upbringing, just being able to do all things. And so I kind of don't want to not give up on anything. I want to say give up. I kind of just want to push the limit in every single aspect that I can. So like we talked about before with football, I still believe that I have a lot left in me. And so March 26th is BYU's Pro Day. So I just hope to see what can come of it.
Yeah.
In regards to school, right now, I'm preparing to do a documentary. And so, like, the BYU's mass communications program is insane. So you can either do a thesis or a project. I decided to do a project, excuse me.
Okay.
And so I took a documentary class last year, and it was just interesting to me how, like, my teacher made us feel like anybody could do a documentary about, like, there's always a story to tell. And so, just getting into that, getting the gist of things, I'm excited to be launching that. And hopefully towards the end of summer. And so that's the goal for there. And so I'll be finishing up my master's with law school. I just want to be able to be qualified in that area. Yeah. One of the biggest things growing up, my dad wanted to make sure that I understood law and the laws of the country. And so I've always been passionate about helping out the little guy. And so the church has been doing a lot. Church of Jesus Christ has been doing a lot in representing underrepresented people. And so they worked a lot with the NAACP, and they've been representing people pro bono. And so I'm super, And so they have a great program that I've been talking to a lot of people in the program that are excited about the upcoming work. And that's something I want to be a part of. And with music, that's if there's anything I was born into, that was what I was born into. My grandmother had a hit song in the 60s, and then my dad rapped in the 90s. My grandma, Barbara Lynn, she had a hit song called You'll Lose a Good Thing.
Really?
Knocked Elvis off the chart.
No way.
Yeah, she's insane. She's like she's like the first female left-handed lead guitarist, and like she's insane. And the blues, like you look her up on YouTube, she got everything, all the tools for artists. Yeah. And then my dad, he was great, phenomenal musician. And then my grandfather on my mother's side, because my mom's from Samoa, and so he would tour islands. And so my late uncle, who passed recently, he was picking up in the music area. And so
so it runs in the family.
Runs in the family. So now I feel like it's my turn. And so me and my brother and my sister, we had a little family group. And so with the freestyles, it's just more or less I take popular songs that people like. I maybe sometimes sample a classic on there, and then I just write to it and just sing my own lyrics, and then hopefully it's just like another rendition of it. Yeah,
well, I've listened to a lot of those freestyles, and you're amazing. Like honestly, like it was funny because before you got here, I was telling people that you were coming, right? That I work with here, and they're like, who's Batchlor Wise Johnson IV, right? And I said, so I turned on one of your freestyles, and I didn't show them a picture yet. I just turned it on and let them hear it, and they're like, whoa, who's this? And I go, this is Batchlor. And they're like, wow, that's incredible.
That's big time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you betcha. Well, so what are your, I love, like I told you, the reason why I wanted you on here and I reached out to you is I love the way you live your life. You're passionate. You're energetic. I know you want to do good. You obviously have a big heart. I think you do put a lot of pressure on yourself because you want to do so much,
Yes, sir.
What are some of your bigger plans? Like, and you obviously got some big plans,
yes,
but,
sir.
What do you want to do to like maybe help, others in your community or that kind of thing?
So I'm super passionate about just like equality, equity, and things of that nature. And so for me, what drives me is the fact that if I were to be raised in the areas that I was raised in the first 7 years of my life, I don't think I'd be here today.
Really?
And I honestly believe my parents don't really like this too much because they feel like I don't give myself enough credit. But in my head, I feel like you put anybody in my shoes, raise them the way that I was raised, allow them to see the things that I saw, they would be in the same position as me, if not greater. And so for me, I believe getting people resources is what I care about. And so I know that I have family members, friends who lived on the opposite side of the freeway, so to speak, just a county down, and they don't get the same things. And so, of course, like, you know, the way capitalism works and the way school systems work, your schools are funded by, you know, taxpayer money. So if you live in a nicer area, you're going to have nicer resources and things of that nature. And so for me, I just want to do similar things to what Mark Cuban's doing. Like, I don't know if you know, but he's making like more affordable, like pharmaceutical products. And so I just see different things, and I just want to provide a different light. Because if you show people their potential, they're more likely to get there. And so for me, I saw what I could do. And so I was like, okay, I can get there. And so when you tell yourself that every single day, I feel like there's a lot of work to be done. And to be honest with you, like, my main reason why I want to go to law school is I do want to run for president one day.
Really?
And I never said this out loud. Cause like first,
this is the first time?
Cause usually
right on.
I was voted most likely to run for president. I wanted to shy away from it. And the reason why I wanted to shy away from it, because I used to hate the Obama jokes towards me. You know, like, I used to always get, especially Texas conservatives. So I would always get, like, so they would always be, thanks, Obama. And so they would do, thanks, Batchlor, when I was class president. And it used to get under my skin. Yeah. And so I shied away from it. And my dad's like, son, you need to go to law school and political background. Like, you could really make a difference. And so I hated politics for the longest time.
Yeah.
But then I realized, you know, like, I can't say that I hate something in general that affects us so much. And it's like, I don't want to be the person, like, everybody thinks that they have the best advice, right? Everybody thinks they have the best advice. And even me as a sports fan, I tell a coach what they should have done. And, you know, it doesn't help anything out. And so the way that you effectively fix things is inside out. And so for me, in my ideal world, I'd run for president when I'm 35. But I know it's not how it works, but that's what I shoot for.
Really?
And so even think about it kind of makes me uncomfortable. But yeah, like, I really do like making a difference and being able to establish, like, better, not only community relations, but relations with other countries and getting to know different cultures and things of that nature. Like, it's super fun. Like, growing up in Houston was like the 7th most diverse city when I lived out there. Mm-hmm. And then coming out to Utah and experiencing different culture and the stigmas that I had of Utah coming here and then things changing, I'm like, I actually love this state. I love this state so much. And then you see different people, like, especially growing up with, you know, like, Texas was conservative. Most of the people I met in Utah are conservative. You realize that I hear people say people are generally bad. In my head, people are good. I feel like most people have great hearts. Most people have great aspirations, and we're all essentially fighting for the same thing. Yeah. And to me, I don't see why you can't put 20 people, liberal, conservative, libertarian, Green Party, you put them in one room for 8 hours and they can't come up with a plan to push this country forward. That's in my head.
Yeah, sure.
And so for me, it's just like, how can you really change a generation? I feel like it starts with education, and it starts with the simple act of, like, loving your neighbor. I know it sounds corny, but literally loving your neighbor, the only way you can love your neighbor is if you get to know them.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just like, I need to humble myself enough to get to know anybody, no matter their history, no matter their background, and then effectively make a change from there.
Wow, I love it. Talk about a big goal, president, right? I love that. Well, I think it goes back to what your dad was always and your mom were teaching you as a kid. There's no limits. I mean, think about that. It's pretty powerful that they would be willing to do that, or that they did do that. I mean, I think that's incredible that your parents are like that, actually. And I'm sure it was tough at times, because it sounds like they didn't mess around, right?
Not at all.
They didn't screw around. But I think I like that, because they taught you discipline, and they taught you to live a certain way and act a certain way, you know, and, you know, even all the way down to you can't wear a hoodie. You know, I think, again, I actually like that, because, again, like you said, you don't want to portray something you're not.
Yes, sir.
Most
definitely.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So, you know, you mentioned, you know, a few times in the podcast, but you were one of the only black kids in your school at the time, right? And
yes,
and the LDS kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had both of those, I guess, quote unquote working against you a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Talk about that a little bit more, because I think, we don't, people, I mean, I've grown up in Utah. We're pretty sheltered here, honestly. I think it's getting better. Yes, but I tell us what that was like, and you mentioned you were even bullied for being LDS, and then even being teased. Oh, thanks, Obama. Thanks, Batchlor, that kind of thing. Talk more a little bit about that, would you?
Yes, sir. It started in the home. Like, you had to be, like, my parents made sure we were comfortable in our own skin. And so, at least my experience, for me, it was rough, but it was rough in the sense that you didn't really understand growing up as a kid. And, like, I don't know, like, I've been it all my life, so, like, I don't really know any differently. I've never, like, even coming out to Utah, like, you think you'd be able to relate to everybody because you share the same faith, but then you don't, because your cultural experience is different.
Right.
And so in every aspect, it has been different. But in regards to, I'll just start with faith.
Okay.
As kids, you don't really notice because you're kids, but when you start growing up and you start realizing you're not getting invited to certain parties, you're not getting invited to hang out with certain social groups. Like, it starts to, like, not mess with you, but you start to realize, dang, like, this is different. Right. Like, my first high school relationship, like, I had people telling her that Mormon kid is brainwashing you, and I was just like, dang, like, I didn't even really know people thought like that about my faith. And so my prom group, it was just me and my best friend that I had baptized that year. Mm-hmm. It was me, him, and our dates. And that was our prom group. Our homecoming group was maybe like 6 or 7 of the guys, and our dates. It wasn't like, and in Texas, like, you typically have a big group, especially for your senior homecoming, and like things like that used to get to me, used to make me realize, like, dang, I can't ask out this girl, not because, like, I'm not a good guy or she's not a good person, but I just know that parents may not be cool with it.
Parents might struggle with it. Yeah.
And the thing is, though, like, I got the respect from a lot of them as we gotten older because of my moral standing. Like, even on the football team, they would make jokes like, "Hey, if you wanna," they literally would say this in like, they said, if you wanna leave your girl for the night, leave her with Batchlor, because at least you'll know she'll come back untouched. And they would laugh about it. And in my head, I was just like, it is what it is. And then they had like the top 10 whitest black kids in the district, or either in the school in the district. And I was voted number 3. And then they took me off because they said, he's Mormon, he's supposed to act like that. And it was just like things like that. And you look back and it's funny. It didn't get to me at the time. But you just start to realize, like, wow, like, I really did live in an area that it was just super, super different.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't anything. I loved it though. I embraced it. And like my favorite athlete of all time is Kobe Bryant. And although vastly different lifestyles, but he like embraced the role of the villain. And so for me, I always try to, even though I was not the villain and all, but I just embraced and all the hate. I just embraced it. It was just like, like, you can't please everybody, but at the same time, you can't change who you are. It just basically, if I could put it in simplest terms, where I'm from, you either lead the gospel, or you become so converted in the gospel that nothing can shake you. There's no in between. Right. Like, I felt like when I came out here to Utah, there's a bunch of people that hang on the fence, they go through the motions. You cannot go through the motions where I'm from. Either you show up to seminary or you don't. Like 6 a.m. seminary, you don't. You either are a member or you're not, because you are like one of 15 people in the 4,000 school that's LDS, and whatever you do shows them. So like, I remember people be like, I'm not really LDS. I would see people like that, like in my school. Yeah. But me, I ate it up and I loved it. And it got to the point where I could have been a better member missionary though. I could have been, but I was so defiant. I was young, I was immature. Yeah. But then coming out to Utah, it was a different beast. I was known for being LDS back home. When I came out here, everybody's LDS. I was known for, the color of my skin. Yeah. And it's like all of a sudden people assume that you're a certain way. Like, I've had many, not even just kids around me, I had many professors that would ask me like, hey, if you need any extra help with religion class, and I'll be sitting here thinking to myself, like, I'm a member too. Like,
Yeah.
And then a lot of people assume that I was there for football. And as much as I wanted to be there for football, I didn't make the team.
Right.
So I was strictly an academic kid. And so it took me a couple years to establish who I was. And but it was cool though. BYU, it may be uncomfortable, but BYU offered me opportunities to be on panels to talk about race and do certain different projects. So it's cool, but I mean, like, you know how I don't think Utah is racist. I believe that there's places that were actually racist, but I think Utah is just racially unaware. So if they both can say, like, let's say that someone says a derogatory comment about blacks in Texas, the same derogatory comment in Utah. There's two different experiences behind it. Like in Texas, you support black people when your team plays on Saturdays, when your team plays on Fridays, when your team plays on Sundays. And you see them down the street in high school football, college football, you love them. But day to day, it's like, not that you hate black people, but you don't want them dating your daughter. But in Utah, Utah is a little different. Utah is, I only see what the media shows me. I only see what's around me because it's like .something% black people in Utah. So because you're not around black people, you don't really understand that. You can't put them all in the same category. And so when I came out here and I started hanging out with different people, they start to realize, like they tell me, like, hey, I wasn't expecting this. And then I used to be offended, but now I'm like, we do that as normal human beings all the time. Like if I was around, for example, the same portrayal of pit bulls. I hear people all the time say pit bulls are one of the most loyal dogs, loving dogs. But the only thing I've seen of pit bulls are the biting, the fighting. And so I realize that I have my own biases when it comes to certain things. And so being around that has been able to open my perspective up a bunch.
Wow, that's very well said. Thanks for sharing that, because that's some good perspective there. And again, you know, you coming to Utah from Houston, you know, that's a big difference.
Yes, sir. Most definitely.
But I love what you said. You're like, you know what? I you know, you said you look up to Kobe Bryant as one of your maybe heroes or whatever, and you're like, I try to have that same mentality, right? Because Kobe, he's just like, hey, I got all this adversity, bring it.
Yeah.
I thrive off it. I'm gonna, and it sounds like that's what you're kind of trying to do with everything. Is that, hey, no, I'm gonna do that, get that mental game going, and be doing strong and that kind of thing.
I absolutely adore Kobe Bryant, and his mistakes were made public. His even off the court was made public, but even on the court, you know, the quotes of him being a bad teammate, this and this, and you know, like we live in a media driven world, and negativity transfers in our minds like 7 times more effectively than positive. And so for me, I felt like the only thing that can hold me back from doing what I need to do is my mental. And so like looking at Kobe Bryant and not only like his philosophies of just enjoying life, but the work that he put into it. Yeah. And to me, it like translated to me. It's like, you know what, this is how I was raised. Like if you put in the work, this is what comes out of it. Like preparation kills fear. And like in my life, I'm not going to be like, I may be confident, but I have so much fear that I feel like runs through me. And it's just like, I just got into Star Wars. I don't know if you're a big Star Wars fan. I just got into Star Wars. I've never watched Star Wars growing up. Yeah. But in Star Wars, when they're talking to Anakin in the first movies, they're telling them, Anakin, mind your thoughts. Like, mind your thoughts, Anakin, mind your emotions. Because he showed a lot of fear. Yeah. And I was watching it. It just resonated with me. I was like, oh my goodness, that's so true. Yeah. And so like with Kobe Bryant, like just, you know, the year anniversary of his passing, and just the whole mama mentality, like just not only just thinking limitless, but just being relentless. And like failure comes to us all. And having a fear of something that's going to happen, there's like literally no point in it. Right. And so just learning from your mistakes and being able to capitalize on your mistakes. Like if I can master anything in this life, it would be controlling my emotions and mastering my mistakes. Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, that video you posted of Kobe on your Instagram where, you know, he was talking about shooting all those air balls, right? And you know, that guy was asking the interviewer, was like, well, you know, how did you get over that? And he's like, I had to get over myself. No one cares but me. Right. And he goes, and it's like, okay, why did I shoot those air balls? Okay, now I got it. I'm going to fix it. Now I'm going to do something different. Exactly. Right. So I love that. Yeah. It's just the whole mentality. Like Kobe airballs those shots and did Kobe lose or did his team lose? And like his team lost, and he realized like it's bigger than him. So that's why I tell my mom all the time. Like my mom is brutally honest with me. My mom is like, if I talk to my mom, I know I'm for sure gonna get advice that it's not gonna feel good, but it's gonna be what I need to hear.
Right.
And so I tell my mom about relationship problems. I tell my mom about football problems. I tell my mom about, my music's not doing what I want it to do. And she tells me, she's like, son, it's not about you. And like she tells me all the time, she's like, she said, you will never be happy spending your time with people and places that don't want you. And I didn't want to hear that because it was like, like this relationship's supposed to work out, or BYU football's supposed to work out. Like I'm living the right way. How come this is not happening? And my mom sits here and she just paints things out like in a blatant way that only she could get away with.
Right.
Right. And it just puts everything in perspective. Like if my true goal is to better the world and community around me, and to like one day be the best husband and father that I could be, like if I could be a duplicate of my dad, half the man that he is, I would have considered I've done my job.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like if that's truly my goal, then not my individual struggles don't matter, but my individual struggles do not matter enough for me to not fulfill my daily obligation. And so like when you talk to me about just waking up with a good mindset, I'm thinking to myself, like, that's something that I have full control over of. Like, I don't control other people's actions. I don't control this or that. But like, I hate the fact that I've allowed myself to let go of my agency to choose whether or not that I'm happy. And I've met people that actually have like struggles that are like, that are real things that need to be solved with medication, things that they have like born with that's hereditary, and things that like I'm still learning about. But I know for me in my individual state, like the things that I can control, and like the things that you talked about just resonated with me. Like when you said that you wake up with a good mindset every morning, I was like, I didn't even know. Like in my head, like I know it's possible, but just to hear it out loud, it's just like, that's what I need to do. Yeah. Like it's just like that's why you're inspiring people, and I'm learning because you wake up with a mindset. And I absolutely like. That's why I honestly, I know I'm sharing my story, but I needed this so much just to like see you face to face and be able to learn from you and understand like not only is this possible, but it's possible right now. Yeah. And so like I appreciate you thoroughly, more than you understand. But like you. I feel ready to anything anybody needs of me, I feel ready to get to work. So yeah.
Well, thanks for the kind words. I really do appreciate that. And I don't always wake up in a good mood, but I'm pretty consistent at it, and it's taken me a while to figure that out.
Consistency is
the key.
That is really a godlike trait, and I think that it's so undervalued. Just being consistent.
Yeah. I think I heard once that David Goggins, that ex-Navy SEAL, said he goes, I'm the most patient guy on the planet. He goes, I can watch grass grow for 20 years. Oh my I was like, whoa. And he probably can, that guy. He's on another level. But no, I appreciate the kind words. But it was interesting, the conversation we had before we got on here. And it was really cool. And I wish we were recording, actually. It would have been really cool for our listeners to hear that. But thank you for being so vulnerable. I got one last question for you, if that's okay. If there's someone listening to your voice right now who's struggling, who just feels, I guess, lonely and lost, what would you tell them right now?
Just to surround yourself with things and people that you love. For the longest things, you start chasing things that don't fill you, right? And I say this not in terms of just people. I'm talking about like substances. Like I used to play video games a lot to distract me. It didn't fill me, but the things that do fill you may take a little work. Yeah. And so if people can understand to surround yourself with people and things, places that fill you, then you become more aware of yourself. Yeah. And when you become more aware, you realize that like the limits that we put on ourselves are placed by the constructs that are around us, and sometimes the people that are around us, and just the life that we live. And so the whole live limitless, it's not just in regards to chasing your career or trying to change the world or trying to change the world that you have. It's literally like think limitless in like your mind. Like like for me, like growing up, like why can't, like for example, like I grew up with a family that down south, you don't really eat healthy. Yeah. And so even something as simple as that, like why can't I eat healthy? And in my head, I translate that to everything. Like, why can't I make it to the NFL? Like, why can't I win a Grammy? Like, why can't I go run for president? And it's like, yeah, a lot of this stuff has to do with other people's control over whether or not, but the work that you put in is all on you. And so you can tell yourself today, I'm a step closer to where I want it to be. Yeah. And so even if I don't win a Grammy, even if I don't make it to NFL, even if I don't become president one day, in my head, I would have known that if I spent every single day at least working towards it just a little bit, I would be the best husband and father that I could be one day. And like, that's all I care about. And like building up the next generation is like all of our goals. Because at the end of the day, we're all, I think everybody just wants two things, like happiness and peace. Yeah. And so like for people that are struggling, especially when I was struggling, when I changed my surroundings and I changed, like it helped me change my mindset. Because it's not easy going in, day out, telling yourself to be happy and like that you choose whether you're happy or not. Like, you know that, but it's not easy at all. And so it starts with, like, for me at least, it started with me changing my surroundings. And from then on, I started to get back to that limitless mindset that I once had as a kid.
I love it. That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. It's powerful. You know, if there's someone listening to this right now that wants to reach out to you or follow you or get to know you or ask you a question, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I'm more active on my Instagram. Okay. So my Instagram, Batchlor IV, my name is spelled BATCH, like Batch of Cookies, LOR, Batchlor IV on Instagram. Okay. And so DM me on there. I have my email on there. Okay. And so, yeah, if anybody has a question, I'm always willing to have conversations and always willing to talk, be vulnerable. I'm not ashamed of any struggle that I've had. It doesn't, like, we're all human. Like I said, we're all human beings trying to work towards the same thing.
For sure.
I'm more open.
That. Well, and I challenge the listeners to actually reach out and go check out his Instagram and listen to some of his music, the way he sings. I mean, you're getting like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 likes on everything, and you really are making an impact.
Thank you.
In a positive way. And again, I'm honored that you'd be willing to come do this. I mean, I really am. It means a lot to me. And I also want to give props to your parents. A shout out to your parents right now. What are their names?
My dad's Batchlor Wise Johnson III, and then my mom's Moretta Johnson.
Batchlor Wise Johnson III. I should have known that, right? Right. Well, I want to give a shout out to your parents and say, hey, thank you for teaching your son to be an amazing human being, because he's doing a good job at that. And I would bet your dad says you're just like him. You know, you said if you were half the man as him, you'd consider that a success, but I would say you're probably just like him. And so thank you for sharing some insight with us today and taking some time out of your busy schedule. And I'm just excited to get this out to our listeners. And so thank you, Batchlor.
No, I appreciate it. I think you're doing, like, you're like, I'm hyped. I wish I could put it into words, but I'm excited. Okay. And so, like, awesome. I know for sure, especially after, you know, I've known Kennedy for some time, your daughter, and the spirit that she has, it all starts from home. Yeah. And so I don't know what it is about dads, but I feel like that's what, having kids, I hope I get that superpower too, because I feel like dads are just relentless in terms of chasing their goals and people to look up to, and the best advice givers, counselors. And so I know for sure, like,
you will be there. I hope and the reason why you will be good at it is because you're going to go through a lot of trials and heartaches and pain, just like your dad did and just like I've done. So I'm not really any better than you. I'm just further down the road of experience. That's it. We're the same, my friend. And so, but anyway, thank you so much, man. That was beautiful.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
Well, there you go, listeners. Another amazing individual, another amazing guest. Thank you for joining me. And again, thank you for always supporting this. I love you guys, and keep supporting this. Share this with everybody. Please check out Batchlor. Reach out to him, ask him a question, go listen to him sing. You will be pumped. He's amazing. And you guys are amazing. Love you. Until next time.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.